Hello again, and welcome to Winning with the Wrangler at Dick Powell's Leadership Corner, brought to you by Earth, Wind, Fire, Water Training and Development, where our passion is building leaders of today and tomorrow. Leaders, we gather information from many different places and many different people. If you hear yourself in our conversation today, please remember it is not all about you. Now, today's topic is going to be, well, different. You see, I'm going to entitle this whole piece Fear. I hope that you as leaders are not passing on this fear mentality to those around you. I do that because, well, quite frankly, I was gone and listening to another person speak. Yeah, boy, I tell you, the speaker's opening statement, I think, scared people half to death. Now, that might have been what he was trying to do. I don't know. But his first thing out of his mouth is everyone lives in fear. Our nation is in fear. Our whole world is in fear. Our lives, at every corner of our lives, is in fear. And I sat there and I could not believe what I was hearing. I thought, this should be a place of hope, of peace, of forgiveness. And here we are, we're banging on the message of fear. Well, when I settled down for a second, I have to tell you what the first thing that came to my mind was something from Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who said, only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And I guess that kind of resonated with me. You see, I kind of grew up not fearing anything. And of course, I grew up in the dead-end street and the swamp, and there were lots of things that I probably should have been afraid of, maybe, alligators and bears and, things like that, But I was never afraid. I was never in fear. There were times I was more and more cautious than I should have been, maybe. But I was never lived in fear. Even in today's world, where we have some mass shootings, we have, these other things that happen, the terrible things happen to good people. If you're spending your life living in fear, well, you're going to shut yourself away from life. Things do happen, no doubt about it. But there's a difference. There's a way to handle and not be in fear of your life. Leaders, we must not ever preach fear to our people. You see, when we do, it only incites more fears within them. And the questions start to arise. Fear of what is a basic question. Do they fear the sun will not rise in the morning? Do they fear that the stars will not come out tonight when it gets dark? You see, do they fear they won't have enough food? Do they won't have shelter? They won't have, those kind of things, won't have a job. Do they fear not having a job? What is it that they fear? And how do we work on abating those fears? You see, when people spend more time doing research and planning and preparing for their vacation than they do their future, we've done something. I think we've taken a wrong turn. You see, as leaders, I believe that's part of our things we should be doing. Helping people see. Now, years ago, I wrote down a little bit of a jingle, and it stuck for a lot of years. If you're not planning your life, someone else is and will. The fear happens when someone else is planning your life. Because, if you don't do it, someone will, sure enough. A long time ago, when I was working for a large organization, every 3 years came around was a union contract. Oh, and the fear would happen. The day after we signed the contract and all was good, the fear for the next 3 years would start to be put into place by some people, the leaders. It's kind of the way they controlled people. When people were afraid, they could control them. And so many times somebody would say, well, Dick, how come you're not afraid of losing your job? And of course, I was never afraid to lose my job because I always figured by the time I got home, I would have something, whether it was digging ditches, pumping gas, bagging groceries, throwing papers. I would have something before I told Miss Robin, by the way, I got laid off. That's just kind of, I never worried about it. I never lived in fear. But the people around me were fearful of their jobs, and they would bend to the whims of the people who were managing them. I saw them fear of not being able to produce or not producing enough. There was all sorts of these fears. And every one of them could have been abated by being prepared. Now, I know that you're going to say, what, Dick Powell, he learned that in Boy Scouts. You're right, I did. But it's stuck. It's stuck all these years. And it's not just knowing how to tie some knots or some basic first aid. It was about learning all I could about my chosen career and staying on top of the latest and greatest things and looking forward. So many times people come through the doors of our company here, and of course they've been laid off or the factory shut down. Something's happened traumatic to them, and we say, well, where do you want to go back in that type of work? Or what do you want to do? And they usually want to do that because that's what they know, but they have not stayed on top of what they have chosen as their career. And so they have to go back and get prepared. First, at our side, we have to do some research to find out what they need to get prepared with. It's all because they didn't stay on top. They didn't stay prepared. You know, I mean, I don't understand because I've never had that fear. Even today, in my later years, people always tell me, oh, you better be afraid that you're going to run out of your money before you run out of your life. No. Miss Robin and I have taken steps to prepare for that opportunity. Of course, I love what I do, and I love sharing with you all, but I'm trying to encourage each and every one of you who's listening, because we're leaders. We need to pass this on. Remove this thing of fear from people's life. If they come to you and they're in fear of something, let's look at how to abate it. Let's look how to give some solutions. I had some people at a church tell me that, gee, the reason people don't do such and such and such is they don't have any money, and they have to live, Thursday to Friday like my folks did. And I said to them, I said, can we have some instructional opportunity on how to handle money and how to make money work for you and how money works. It was funny. The leadership really didn't want to do that because I could see that the leadership knew that if they held that fear on those people, they had a controlling factor. And once I came in and started teaching them how money works and how to save money and how to use it, all of a sudden things started to change and people had a different thought process. You see, they were looking towards the future. They were paying off their debts and getting going. But that's just a small little piece of this whole thing of not be living in fear. Now, one of the fears that came up is that, every person doesn't have what they need. I have a great friend who is a philanthropist, and I'll tell you, this person will just do anything for anybody to help them. So one day he noticed a young man down the street didn't have a bicycle, and he the young man couldn't go anywhere, and he was complaining that, he didn't have a bicycle like everybody else. And his family were in a situation that, a new bicycle was not in the cards. So my good friend, well, he went out and purchased a new bicycle. Took it over and gave it to the young man, and boy, the young man was excited. And of course, my friend went about his business, and no big deal. A few weeks later, he came back to just to see how the young man was doing, whether he'd gotten that paper route job he was talking about, or how things were going. He looked around, he didn't see the bicycle. So he asked the young man, he said, "Hey, where's your bike? Are you fixing it? Are you doing something, and is it in the garage? Is it, He said, "No." He says, "I don't have it anymore." My friend said, well, what happened? And the young man said, "Well, it got a flat tire." And he said, "Well, did you fix it?" "Well, no. I just threw it in the trash. I couldn't use it anymore." Fear of learning, fear of responsibility, fear of accountability. Those are big fears. But they're also something we can do about. Now, my friend, he's been disheartened about that for quite a while. It hasn't stopped him from being a philanthropist, hasn't stopped him from doing the good things. He just does it in a little different manner now. But that one point where that young man had got a flat tire, threw the whole bike away, was because he didn't have to work for it, didn't have to do anything for it. There was no accountability. The big part, though, my friend kept asking me over and over. He'd say, where were the parental units when that boy made that decision? Because he's like me. If my child would have done that, he would have had to buy a new one and pay the man back, because that's the right thing to do. So the fear of not having what someone else has, the fear of these if you're living in fear, leaders, if you're seeing someone living in fear, find out what the root cause is. Do some relationship building. Find out what the cause is, and then do some solutions for that cause. Maybe they've never learned. Maybe they've never had the opportunity. That's a different thing than living in fear. You see, the thing about being prepared, it's about ongoing continuous learning. It's about helping self first, and then helping those around you. It's about being able to handle a situation no matter what arises. It's just more than a couple of words that they put on a plaque. Be prepared. It's been a great thing for me to live my life that way. And when we've shared this with other people in other parts of the country, in other lands, and they learn how to really start taking care of themselves, being accountable, personally accountable, you watch their fears move away. But to stand in front of a group of people and lay that fear on top of them, I'm sorry, I just can't agree with it. I believe that we as leaders, we have been assigned a task. Our task is to build more leaders. Our task is to do that by walking and talking and doing the right thing, by sharing our knowledge. I keep going back to those words, that fear is nothing but fear. What was it again? Let me rephrase it. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And I keep going back there, and I keep thinking to myself, what is it? Here's a challenge for you. Write down on a piece of paper all the things you fear. I want you to do that. I want you to write down on a piece of paper all the things that you fear. And then I want you to do some research on each one of them. Find the root cause. Why do you fear that? Now, there are some good things to be fearful of, just so you know. Okay? I was pretty fearful of the bears and things out in the, I don't know if I was I think I was afraid, but I wasn't fearful. You see, I was prepared. I knew I could handle it. I think there's a big difference there. But fear is what we make it. Yes, there's fear, like I said, with the fight or flight being, if you're being chased by a grizzly bear, that's pretty, you want to run. I would ask the question, though, are you running because you made a bad decision about getting too close to a mother grizzly bear? Or are you running because you made the grizzly bear have a response to your actions? You see, that's afraid or fear. There's two different things. You weren't very fearful to walk up there and get too close. But you were darn sure afraid when they came after you. You see, it's different. It's two different things. We as leaders, though, we have a responsibility. We as leaders are responsible to help, to instruct, and to encourage people to prepare themselves for life's obstacles and how to respond to them. I've seen people in hurricanes and thunderstorms and tornadoes, and some people respond very well and some not at all. And you have to ask yourself, like I did when I did the interviews after the big hurricane we had here in Florida, I asked the people, well, were you ready? Were you prepared? Those who were prepared kind of weren't really all that shook up. You see, they had food and water and they had shelter, and even though one had lost their roof, I helped him put a big old blue tarp on there and they were okay. Wasn't the best situation, but they were okay. They weren't fearful. They were afraid of the hurricane. Different. They weren't fearful because they were prepared. You see, we can prepare ourselves. We can do that. We're human beings and we have that ability to take action. This draws the line between who and what we are. But really, seriously, we as leaders have an obligation. And if we're not doing that, we're just not doing our job, Dad Burnett. And that's the part when this gentleman started out this whole thing and got me kind of riled up, as you can tell, when he said, everyone lives in fear. I thought, what planet did you come from? Because I don't live in fear. And I turned to some people next to me. I said, are you living in fear? Are you afraid of something's going to harm? And they said, well, no, I'm not really in fear of anything. I said, well, how about you? You fear for our nation? Well, there are times when I'm concerned. Sure enough, you betcha. And the whole world, going to heck, yeah. In the handbasket, they said, well, only you can control your own fears. And only you can control your own fears by being prepared and knowing how to respond to the different things that will happen to you. Life does happen. Some good, some not so good. It normally comes from when we make bad decisions. And bad decisions, quite frankly, usually happen when we're not prepared. Because that's when we make excuses. I know it all comes around the circle. And you know what? I have to tell you that I sure want to take and leave you on a positive note. Because I'll tell you, I think this is a fun piece. You see? Find everything already ready. Find everything already ready. You see, if you're prepared, fear is not a big deal because you're going to find everything already ready. Do you have a to-go bag? Whatever it is you're putting together. Here we've had our preparedness for hurricanes, well, since we were first married. I mean, that's been a long time ago. And we trade things in and out, so it's always up to date. And it's something we think about, but we're not fearful. I've been through some pretty harrowing things, and I've been afraid, but I wasn't fearful. There is a huge difference. And leaders, golly goodness, It's our responsibility. It's who and what we should be doing. We should be talking about peace. You know, I mean, come on. Peace be with you. This is peace. It's such an easy thing to say, but it's such a hard thing to live. Peace drives fear away. Being prepared drives fear away. So why don't we talk about that every day? Why don't we talk about the good things that are happening every day? Why don't we really look at each other and say, what great thing happened to you today? And it could be, if you get to be my age, sometimes that great thing is I got up and it didn't hurt this morning. But you understand what I'm saying? There's always some good things. There always will be. Will there always be things in life? Will bad things happen to good people? Yes. Life happens. The thing is, though, is a lot of times when we look at those bad things that happen to good people, it really boils down to, were they prepared? Were they able to make good decisions because they had done some research and gotten prepared to do so? Were they given the information to make those good decisions? That's where we come in as leaders. We're there to instruct. We're there to share that good knowledge to the people around us can make great decisions. Because when they can make great decisions, they become great leaders. In times of terribleness and things that are happening in our world, the great leaders step up. Some of them, you don't even know who they are when they do it. And some of them don't even want to be known or said thank you to. It's just that's who and what they are. It all boils down to, you can be in fear, or you can take some time to start preparing yourself for things that are going to happen in life. So if you're going to live in Florida, this is what you prepare for. If you're going to be in Tornado Alley, you're going to think about, hey, I live in Tornado Alley and I need to think about this and prepare for it. You know? If I'm going to go on a long trip, I need to get my car prepared to go on a long trip. It just seems to make sense. It's common sense, doesn't it? But, Miss Robbins says common sense isn't too common anymore, but I think it is. I think we as leaders can set the tone of positivity and remove the negativity. I think we as leaders can stand up and say, hey, things are happening. This is what we can do about it. Here's a solution. Let's all step up and get her done. I suppose that comes from growing up in a little bitty town where things did happen. People just showed up to take and help out. They didn't have to be asked. They didn't have to be told. They didn't have to be paid. Well, none of us had any money anyhow, but it just happened. One of the things I truly miss about our town where we live getting as big as it has, as we have lost that hometown feeling. We have lost that hometown self-leadership, the self-direction, but when somebody next to us needed us, we showed up. And we've lost that. I think it's hard to do that when you live in those high rises. I don't know. Never lived in one. Probably never will. But when this gentleman started out his whole lecture with, FEAR, and he was telling me how to think, that's where I draw the line. When people tell me how to think and what I should be thinking and how should be doing it, I'm encouraging you as leaders to remove that F word out of your world. Well, I'd remove both of them, just so you know. But the fear one is one that just kind of drives me nuts. Okay? Finding everything already ready. It's a different way of looking at it. I see we got about 5 minutes left on our show today. And so I would like to encourage you, but I'd like to give you some challenges. So time to get out your pencil and paper and write down your challenge of the day. And it's important. First of all, I'd like to challenge you to really write down all the things that you are fearful of. And get them down and really take some time and do some research on why and get that common piece on why you're fearful of it. And then look for a solution. That's the first one. The second one is I want you to talk to your neighbor. I want to talk to someone you work with. Talk to someone around you and really ask them, what are they fearful of? Are they fearful? And if they are, encourage them to write that list. And then I want you two to talk about it. You see, that's building a relationship. And when we build relationships, we sometimes remove that fear right off the bat. I just think it's a terrible word. I think it's a word we can do without. And as leaders, you see, these things that I encourage you to do, not just for you, I encourage you to do them with all the people that are around you. When we start actually communicating with one another and sharing our fears with one another, all of a sudden they don't turn into fears. If we look for solutions. But if we go to the mob mentality, well, that's a dangerous place there. And we've seen some dangerous things happen in our country, in our history, when mob mentality takes over. Fear. Finding everything already ready. You see, if you find it already there, that you find you already have the answer. You find you already have the solution because you've prepared yourself. You find that others can be of help and service in helping that situation out. All those things you can find. And everything is right in front of you. Everything has been presented to you for the solutions that you need. And they've already been there for a long time. We sometimes slip backwards in our thought process, and that's just because, well, we're human. But leaders, we need to do better. We need to bring positive thought processes into the folks around us. We need to let them know that fear is nothing but fear itself. We need to let them know that if they have these fears, to get them down and really start to do some research on why they are fearful of that situation. And then we can work with solutions. Leaders, this is something that we must do. And for goodness sakes, I hope I never sit in the audience and hear you say those words that this person started out with. Because I really truly believe that we as leaders have, it's what we need to be doing. Providing hope, honest opportunity, and solutions to life. That's what we're called to do. Now I see I'm getting the high sign that, hey, we need to get going here. So on behalf of myself, Dick Powell, and the whole Leadership Corner team, I want to say thank you for being a part of today's program. Now, if you have any comments or questions on today's program, please don't hesitate. Give me a call. 727-422-1833. 727-422-1833. Send me an email. I'm good with that. dick@ewfw.org. dick@ewfw.org. Go to the website, which you can spend some time and look around and see how we can help you. And then there's a box there to click on, and you can send me a message. Go to www.ewfw.org, www.ewfw.org. And when you know for a fact that you're ready to take and have me, Dick Powell, come and do a leadership seminar at your location for your folks, don't hesitate. Give me a call. Send me an email. Get on the calendar. We seem to fill up every year faster than we really expect. So we need to get you on there and make it happen. Now, I hope you've enjoyed this program. I hope you've learned something. It's always our hope that you get to go where no others have gone before. Well, until next time, BW the Wrangler saying, hey, ride hard, ride fast.